Sir, step away from the dock. Right now, the deputy said, his hand drifting toward the taser, like I was the problem. While across the water, Delilah Whitmore stood on her glossy deck with that country club smile that says she already won, and I just laughed. Not because any of it was funny, but because tucked under my arm was the deed that controls every underground spring feeding their perfect lake, and she had no idea, not yet at least. And in that moment, I knew the punchline belonged to me. 3 months earlier, I was a 52-year-old retired electrician named Rex Thornton in a Denver house that still smelled like my wife Clara's lavender and hospital antiseptic. The kind of scent that can fold you in half without warning when a notice hit my mailbox about an estate auction in Montana, a cabin, and a narrow strip of land with something called territorial water extraction rights. Words that felt like jargon until they didn't. I drove to Pine Lake thinking maybe I'd fix boards and breathe air that didn't taste like traffic. You know what I mean. And the place was small, but honest, a cedar dock. My Uncle Jasper had hand-built 3 acres of pines, water so clear you could count stones 15 feet down, a quiet kind of sacred in surrounding it. Like a diamond necklace were 47 luxury homes that sold the fantasy of exclusive lake access, brochures full of sunrise kayaks, and words like pristine and private, which I didn't clock as a problem until the 6 a.m. knock. Delilah showed up like an alarm in yoga pants with a clipboard and a laser tape. The kind of person who says welcome with her mouth and violation with her eyes. And she rattled off fines so fast I could hear the commas. Non-compliant stain color. Dock cleats. Not to standard a flagpole, 2 inches too proud. A nuisance stack of lumber by the shoreline. Then she slid a pink slip into my hand and said, $500. Due immediately, daily accrual begins tomorrow. And when I told her I bought at a public auction with clear title, and if she could give me a week to figure out what I owned, she tilted her head and said, "We don't do exceptions here, Mr. Thornton. We do standards." I tried being neighborly. I really did. Fixed my tone. Kept a log, took photos, recorded dates and times, but the door hanger tickets kept blooming like weeds. Email subject lines shouting, "Compliance alert," before my coffee cooled. And just when I thought maybe this woman simply loves rules more than people, she came back with a prop. A fake state environmental inspector named Dale, with a crooked seal on his polo and a clipboard that still smelled like shipping plastic, asking me how deep the water got and whether I had plans to dredge, glancing at a mallard like it might testify. And I looked past him and saw the truck he rode in on a Ford, with Whitmore Home Staging curling on the door like bakery script. So I called the actual Department of Environmental Quality on speaker and listened to the woman say, "We have no inspector by that name, and no inspection scheduled for Pine Lake." And Dale ran, just took off, dropped a laminated card that would fool a scared teenager, but not a tired lineman. That's when the vandalism started. Mooring ropes sliced and floating like dead snakes. Support bolts loosened, so the boards groaned under me. Trespasser sprayed in sloppy red on Jasper's cedar like a slap across the face. And I called Garrett Flynn, local surveyor. Fishing guide, historian of everything with a plat book. Who walked my shoreline like a doctor taking a pulse and then said we're installing trail cams. And he tucked infrared eyes into fake bark and pointed audio toward the path, and waited. At 2:27 a.m., the camera saw a hoodie and wire cutters, and the phone call caught a voice saying, "Yeah, Mom, I'm at the dock, red paint." Like you said. 2000, right? And the next morning at Pine Lake Coffee, I slid into the booth across from a jumpy 19-year-old named Bradley, with the same Whitmore jaw. And I pressed play for 10 seconds and watched him fall apart and out. Spilled everything. The emergency fund she controls like a slush pile. The stage security work of the fines. Until you sell below market, and Delilah's real estate company gets the listing. Yeah, that happened. That afternoon, Garrett unrolled old survey maps across my kitchen table and pulled county records on his laptop, while the cabin filled with the smell of dust and pine sap and something electric. And he tapped blue lines drawn in 1887 feeder springs, rising under my land, flowing into a lake. The developers wrapped houses around in the 1990s without ever perfecting water rights, and Garrett said it. Calm because he's a calm man. "Rex, you don't just own a dock, you own the faucet." And my hands shook. Not with anger, this time with responsibility. I carried Jasper's folders to a water law attorney named Maya Blackstone, a ranch-tough lawyer with a handshake, like a firm promise. And she read for 20 minutes without breathing, and then looked up and said, "In 30 years, I've never seen territorial rights this clean. They are appurtenant and predate every modern covenant. And HOA bylaw, you can demand millions in back usage and shut everything down tomorrow and be legal by sundown, or you can waive the past set. Fair monthly rates fund conservation and own the narrative your call. The thing about grief is it teaches you what matters and what doesn't, and money didn't matter the way sleeping at night did. So we wrote a plan, certified notices to each homeowner for lawful access, starting next month, past usage waived if they join the program, and agree to transparency, a conservation fund in Clara's name. And then we filed those notices with the county, so nothing could be buried under a smile. Right then, Delilah tried what bullies try when rules don't bend. She showed up with a manila envelope that rustled like leaves and said, $75,000 cash. If you voluntarily relocate for community harmony. And my phone recorded the whole thing. And the next morning, she filed 3 police reports claiming I'd threatened her with violence, which would have been funny if it didn't waste everyone's time. And Deputy Rodriguez came by, watched the videos, and sighed like a man who'd seen this movie. 17 false reports. She filed in 2 years. He said it were building a pattern. The certified letters landed like a quiet storm. Green receipts, stacking homeowners reading legal language that wasn't a threat, so much as a mirror. And Delilah printed flyers and called an emergency meeting media invited. Bring your outrage. Bring your fear. And Maya just nodded and said, "Perfect. Let her set the stage, and we'll bring the truth." The clubhouse packed early with perfume and anxiety, and people who had no idea how their water reached their kayaks, and Delilah stood up with a slide titled, "Protecting Our Community." Values pointed at me like a defendant told stories about me, scaring kids and vandalizing property, played the part of benevolent dictator, betrayed by a monster with a deed. And I let her talk, because it's important for people to hear themselves before the record corrects them. Then I walked to the mic with Jasper's leather portfolio and set a yellowed deed under the camera and a blue-lined map on the projector, and said, very calmly, there's a reason the lake looks the way it does. Every drop begins on my parcel, recorded in this county in 1887, and your developer never secured water rights in the 1990s. So for 30 years, you have used what the law says flows through me, and I don't want your past. I want a fair future. And then, Maya stood and translated it into statute. Territorial rights supersede HOA covenants and modern permits. The notices you received are lawful. The proposed rates are reasonable. The conservation fund is real and named for my late wife, because we intend to steward what we could have strangled. Before the room could tilt back toward panic, we rolled the receipts. The audio of Delilah's cash offer from the emergency fund for Harmony. The infrared video of Bradley, cutting my lines and whispering into his phone. The camera angle showing Delilah's Mercedes idling, while my truck tires got slashed and the crowd changed. You can hear it. When a crowd exhales, the story they were fed, and inhales the one that fits the facts. And Deputy Rodriguez stepped forward with the kind of posture that makes a room quiet. Pamela Whitmore, you're under arrest for embezzlement, filing false reports, and conspiracy to harass. Turn around, hands behind your back. And the sound of the cuffs was small and loud. At the same time, metal against air, Delilah sputtering about technicalities and terrorized families, while the projector fan winding down felt like a stage curtain. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just told the room. I came here to fix a dock and breathe, not to own anyone. And now that the record is straight, we can choose what kind of neighbors we want to be. And that's where I stopped, because victory isn't the end. It's a door. And doors make people nervous. Later, the apologies came in pie plates and folded letters on my porch. People saying they were scared, and she told them I was dangerous. And I get it, because fear is easy to sell, and we built something steadier. A transparent HOA audit's term limits lawful access, with sliding scale rates, so teachers and retirees don't carry what rich boat owners can shoulder. And every dollar that comes through my water rights goes to the Clara Thornton Conservation Fund. Not because I'm a saint, because stewardship beats scorched earth every single time. Now here's the part people fight about in my comments. Should I have billed them for 30 years of unpaid usage? Should I have shut off the pipes for a week just to make a point? Should Delilah get prison or treatment for the gambling or both? And I don't pretend I hold all the answers. I just know what it felt like to stand on that dock with trespasser bleeding red across the boards and realize I could turn everyone's life off like a breaker and chose not to. You can call that weakness if you want. I call it remembering Clara. So tell me, where do you land? Is the letter of the law the high ground, or is mercy the harder road? Did I do right by waiving the past, or did I let bad behavior skate? And what have you seen where you live? HOAs that help, or little kingdoms that crush? Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me. Teach me. And if you've got a story like this, big or small, put it below, so we can read it out loud together